DJ scream, heavy in the streets.
We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood. We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood.
Good rich.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And I am Ethan. And this evening, we have some appetizers for you. And on the plate, we have some UFC 279 main card. And with that, let's get right into that. And can I get a menu? And first thing I want to talk about first, before I really actually get into that, is I want to talk about last week's card, and specifically the main event between Taya Tuivasa and Cyril Gane. Now, I don't do cards, predictions, and postcard breakdowns like every week. Don't do the podcast every week, but yeah, I think I needed to talk about that anyways, because I think I'd be doing a disservice to such a amazing fight if I didn't, because that card, that fight was ridiculous. I just want to go check back and see what round that finished in, because I know it was a crazy finish regardless. Okay, it finished at 4:23 in the third round. Excuse me. But yeah, that was ridiculous how that ended, and just the back and forth between them, and the fact that like Cyril Gane got knocked down. I think that was, I'm trying to think if that was in the first round or second round. It looked like he was going to get knocked out. Like at that point, when I first saw that, I didn't do a video saying that I picked Cyril Gane to win, but that's who I was going for. At least I picked Cyril Gane to win. I thought he was going to win. I actually didn't think he was going to win by knockout. I thought he was just going to point strike and just win probably by decision, because that's kind of been his method in most fights. And well, he's won some fights by knockout, but against like devastating knockouts and knockout artists and people that are dangerous like Taya Tuivasa, he kind of just likes to point fight and kind of win safe. But I didn't think he was going to win in this kind of devastating fashion like this. But when I seen him get knocked down like that, took that hard shot and got knocked down on his booty like that, I thought it was over. I was like, oh God, it's over. And then to see him fight back from adversity like that and win in the third round, that was wild. And that combination, and then of course there's controversy about the hammer fist to the back of the head. Was it behind the ear? Was it behind the head? But you know, that's just kind of something that kind of sneaks in there in the madness of the finish, and a crazy finish like that. So I don't think it really mattered that much. I think after all those front kicks and kicks to the belly that Taya Tuivasa had taken up to that point, I think he was pretty much done. So I don't think it really matters. And then, of course, later in the week, you had Junior Dos Santos chiming in, saying that Cyril Gane was a dirty fighter, which I think he's far from a dirty fighter. But I think Junior Dos Santos is just kind of salty because he had lost to Cyril Gane maybe a couple years ago or something. And I think maybe at the finish of his fight, he had maybe taken some 12-6 elbows, maybe that were maybe a little suspect. But I used to be a huge fan of Junior Dos Santos during his, I think it was his trilogy fights with Cain Velasquez, I was always pulling for Junior Dos Santos, but that didn't work out too well for me. But I think he's just kind of an old, washed up fighter that's maybe just trying to stay relevant. He's just a little bit salty in the way he lost. But I just wanted to mention that fight. I think I'd be doing disservice if I didn't mention possibly one of the best fights of the year. But now, okay, I think we can move on to the main card. What we're all here for. So the first fight on the main card for UFC 279 is a light heavyweight bout between Johnny Walker and Aya Kutalaba. And I think these guys are very similar fighters. They're just kind of big light heavyweights. They're both very big, bruising, knockout artists, light heavyweights. I think Johnny Walker is probably more of a physical specimen, just in the fact that he's like, what is he? He's like 6'5", 205 pounds. So he's more of a physical specimen, probably a higher ceiling type fighter. And a lot of people thought that he was going to possibly be like the next John Jones, and he had a high arch there for a while, and people thought that he could maybe be like the next champion. But then since he's kind of shown that he's had a little bit of a suspect chin, and that hasn't worked out for him a while. And then Ian Kutalaba's kind of claim to fame has been more his weigh-ins, his face-offs, where I think he's been painted up as the Hulk, or when he comes up to people, he'll act like he's not going to do anything, or he's not going to shake his hand, and then at the last second he like screams in their face and stuff like that. And he's almost started brawls due to acting like that. And then he's had like one controversial fight. I'm trying to think of who that was with. One controversial fight where he got knocked out early in the round, and then he acted like he wasn't actually knocked out. That was against Megamod Ankalov, where he got knocked out in like 38 seconds, where he acted like, I guess he said that afterwards that he acted like he was just playing chicken, that he wasn't knocked out, and then he blamed the ref, and then they ended up having a rematch shortly after, and then he just got knocked out again. So that was kind of his claim to fame of why he is anyone really knows who he is. But he really, since then, he really hasn't done a whole lot. And then in his last fight, he just did the same kind of screaming in people's face and starting like face off, almost brawls and things like that. I think the only person that really worked out for him against was Khalil Roundtree, where he did get a finish with TKO elbows. But like I said, both of these guys are similar type fighters with just like a stand-up striking ability. I think Johnny Walker's probably more refined and maybe more disciplined in that respect. But Kutalaba in his last five fights, he's only won one of them, and one of them is a draw, so he's not doing too well. And just the one wins against Devin Clark. And then Johnny Walker is not a lot better. And his last loss was against Ryan Spain. And coincidentally enough, Johnny Walker's last win was against Ryan Spain. And and out of his last 5 fights, Johnny Walker has 4 losses, so he's 1-4 out of his last fight, so he's not much better, honestly. But out of those two, just because Johnny Walker's um, probably a little more disciplined in his striking, I think I'm going to go with Johnny Walker in that light heavyweight um, fight to start off the UFC 279 card. All right, so I guess wow. Now that I'm looking at this updated card, I saw one of the weigh-ins. I saw that Hazmat Jemaya missed weight by 178.5 and a half pounds here. But now that I'm looking at this card again, it looks like almost everyone missed weight. It looks like three of uh, three of five three of five fighters miss weight. That's pretty disappointing. That many fighters, almost more than half the people on the card missed weight. So more than half the cards are catch weight. So this is the second fight on the card is a female catch weight fight. So it's a 40-pound catch weight fight between Irene Aldana versus Macy Chason. So in this one, Irene Aldana, she has a pretty impressive record just in regard to the fact that she's a female fighter for 145. I guess natural supposed to be 135. But she has 7 knockouts, so that's pretty impressive. And in four of her last um, four of her last in her last 4 fights, she has 3 wins, and her 1 loss is against Holly Holm. So that's pretty impressive. And it was just a decision fight. So if your only loss is against Holly Holm, that's pretty impressive. And 2 of those were by knockout. So I mean that's a pretty impressive record, honestly. So, but that I'm not sure who. I didn't watch the weigh-in, so I'm not exactly sure who missed weight. I do know that Hazmat was the one that missed weight, which he has a history of that. And then the thing about Macy Chason is that she's never been knocked out. So that's the thing. The fact that Aldana does it really matter that she's such a knockout artist? So will that really come into play? And some of the fighters that she's lost out, she has a similar record. She's won 3 of her last 4, and the only loss came to Raquel Pennington. So that's another. If that's your only loss in your last 4 fight, that's pretty impressive. But it was submission. She actually lost due to submission. But Holly Holm is definitely a more decorated fighter to lose to. So just because of those the knockouts, the impressive being able to get those knockouts, that's really impressive. And losing to your only 1 loss in your last 4 fights, coming way of Holly Holmes, by way of Holly Holmes, I think I'm going to go with Irene Aldana with that fight in the second fight. So on to the next fight, which is a catch weight of 180, is between Kevin Holland and Daniel Rodriguez. And Kevin Holland, he's definitely someone that's just constantly just on the fringe of getting a just right there on the fringe of getting a middleweight title fight. But at every chance he gets, he just kind of hits a speed bump. He was probably in a light in a title contender match between Marvin Vettori, and then he lost, and then he was about to go on a little bit of a streak there, and then fought Kyle Dacasas, and he'd probably be on a 3-fight winning streak if he didn't have the accidental head clash with him. But he still is on a two fight win streak regardless, and he is right now, and he's beat has two impressive wins over Alex Oliveira with two TKO by elbows, and Tim Means with a dark choke. So those are two impressive wins that he has right now. And then Daniel Rodriguez, he has a really impressive record. He is he's only 18-2 record, which is very impressive. And his only loss in the UFC is by Nicholas Dalby, and his only two losses are only by decision. So this is kind of a tough fight for me to pick. But the thing about this is Daniel Rodriguez, he is 35 years old, and Kevin Holland is only 29 and has quite a bit, I would say, more of the UFC veteran, I would probably say, and has fought probably tougher competition, and I would say is just like on the very fringe of getting that middleweight title shot, you know. But like I said, I guess I probably should have done a little more. Probably should have done a little more research on who missed weight on there, because that definitely, if I was to guess, I would say it was probably Kevin Holland, because I think he's had trouble making weight before as well. Because I would say this is possibly a title contender, fight as well, and this is definitely hurt whoever's chances at getting that shot, depending on who missed weight. But just off of Kevin Holland having more experience and having those two last impressive wins and being on that 2-fight win streak, I think I'm going to go with Kevin Holland in this fight. In the co-main event against Li Jiangling and Tony Ferguson, man, I'm a little surprised that Tony Ferguson is fighting this soon after taking that devastating knockout, that devastating front kick knockout from Michael Chandler. I would think and that was just May 7th, which that really wasn't that long ago. That was just 4 months ago or so. Like you would think after taking a devastating knockout like that, that you would want to take off some more time than that. You'd think like that just like he was memed after that. His whole face and jaw was like smashed in. You would think you would want to take at least a year to recover after something like that, because after being brutally knocked out like that you are compromised, that your threshold for being knocked out is definitely compromised, that you're going to be susceptible to being knocked out again. And on top of that, he's 38 years old. He's on a four-fight losing streak. I mean, honestly, I don't think I understand, like, a great fighter and a competitor like him wouldn't want to retire after a fight like that, but I don't think anyone would have blamed him if he would have retired after that fight. But to think that he's already going to fight so soon after that, that I just man, I don't know if I think that's wise, but he's his own man. And then Li Jianlang, it's kind of funny that this is the co-main event because he fought his two fights ago. He fought Hazmat Jemaya, and he was in the fight where uh, Hazmat Jemaya like literally picked him up and carried him over to Dana White and started like smashing on him, and then finally submitted him by a rear naked choke. So that's kind of funny that he's on the co-main event, but then in his last fight he got a TKO and elbow win over Muslim Slakov Salikov. So that he got a knockout win in his last fight is kind of scary. That's his last win, and this is a welterweight fight. So just off of that history and that knowledge and that information about Tony Ferguson, I think I'm gonna have to go with Li Jianlang. And man, that pains me to say a little bit, but I just and almost it seems to be kind of set up a little bit as a, 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 a layup fight, a comeback fight for Tony Ferguson, but I just don't trust his chin. All right, and what we're here for, and I don't even know if this fight's gonna. I don't. The weigh-ins were just not that long ago. I don't know if this fight's gonna get canceled because Hazmat Jemaya missed weight so much, so it'd be interesting to see what happens. But anyways, we'll get to that. Let's get to it. So this is a catch weight of 178 and a half. And I guess this is supposed to be was supposed to be a welterweight fight, and just the build up to this fight was ridiculous because the press conference was canceled, I guess, because Hazmat front kicked Kevin Holland in the chest after Kevin Holland had previously called Hazmat a fake gangster, and they got into a scuffle in the locker room in the back and stuff, and Dana White canceled the press conference, and some people said it was because pay-per-view buys weren't going to be good, the numbers weren't going to be good, and they thought their teams were going to have a brawl on stage. So there's just a lot of craziness leading up to this whole fight and this pay-per-view. But anyways, let's just get to this pick here. So historically, I've been a big fan of the Diaz brothers, Nick and Nate. The Stockton slap. I honestly, I thought one of the best sequel fights between Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor was one of the best ever. Nate winning the first one by rear naked choke, and then the controversial decision win by McGregor in the second fight, and kind of a travesty that there was never a trilogy fight was definitely just one of the best ever. And I think there should be a third fight if Conor McGregor is ever healthy, but it honestly doesn't look like Nate, depending on how this fight goes, and Nate Diaz may never fight in the UFC again. But Hazmat definitely looks like the up and comer in this, up and cover in the UFC, and he looked great. He looked good against Burns. He definitely got tested. Seeing him fight in the later rounds after he was just beating people in the early rounds, seeing him in the later rounds, you finally got to see his cardio tested, and you definitely saw him winded, which could be interesting to see if he gets dragged into the later rounds against Nate Diaz. But my main concern with Nate Diaz is just his overall strength. I think Hazmat will probably overpower Nate Diaz. That's why it's hard for me to want to pick Nate Diaz. And then on top of that, if the fight goes later, it's just all the scar tissue and stuff that happens. Like if Hazmat Chimaev just doesn't outright beat Nate Diaz or finish him, which Nate Diaz really doesn't get finished. He never gets knocked out. I don't think if he gets TKO'd, it'll be because of doctor stoppage. That's my main concern. I'd be hard to pressed to believe Nate Diaz is going to get like knocked out or submitted or something like that. But my main concern is if the fight goes past the third round, is Nate Diaz going to get a terrible cut or something that's going to cause a doctor stoppage. So my main thing is probably that, and just because of that, I think I'm going to go with Hazmat Chimaev, and probably due to a cut in the late in the third round, early in the fourth, or something like that. And I guess I didn't really, on any of these fights, I didn't really pick why I think they're gonna, any of them are gonna be, how any of these fights are gonna go. But I guess I can tag at least one or two of them. So a cut in the main event, and then in the co-main event, I think Tony Ferguson's gonna get knocked out. I don't really know what round, and then I think Ian Kutalaba is going to get knocked out in the first round. So there, I'm tagging some how some of those fights are going to go down. So with that, I think that's all I have for you. And so can I get a check, please?